are talking about highly anticipated for us, Evil Dead Rise. Like we mentioned either in our bonus or earlier, it has been 10 years in the making.
10 whole years.
A whole decade.
Which is crazy.
I've lived several lifetimes since the last Evil Dead came out.
I remember when the 2013 one came out, there was all these talks of them doing a sequel, then doing a sequel to Army of Darkness, then crossing the two franchises over, and all this shit, which apparently was a real thing.
Mm-hmm.
But then that got put on a huge hold because Ash vs. Evil Dead came out.
Yeah.
And it looks like that's probably not going to be happening anymore because now Bruce Campbell has officially retired Ash, but
He's
we'll
coming
see.
back.
We'll
He's
see.
gonna come back.
So yeah, I mean, I still wish that could have happened. I guess now there is light talks of them trying to blend all three.
Yeah, we'll talk about that in a little bit.
Which I'm like, cool. Do whatever you got to do. Like, I would love to see Ash again, and I just can't imagine that character in the movie style that we got with this one. Even though it's a little bit closer, but definitely not the style of Fedes. Like. It's a very, very different movie.
So if we, before we get into spoilers, we'll do our usual, do we recommend, do we not recommend?
Yes.
You know, this one I think will definitely need a big spoiler warning because I'm sure a lot of people haven't seen this. But if you're curious, you know, kind of where this lands in the tone of Evil Dead films, since they are kind of all over the place.
Smack dab in the middle.
It does very much feel like it is trying to walk the line of being very similar to Fedes, but like you said, walks it a little bit closer in a couple scenes.
It's got like a toe back hanging out with the original trilogy.
Yeah, toward Evil Dead, but does not get explicitly goofy. Like it's just goofy if you recognize stuff, and there's a couple lines that may feel out of place if you're not an Evil Dead fan that are obviously just things that are homage-y.
There's a little fan service.
Yeah. But overall, it's played very straight. It's very brutal. And I had a great time with it. We had a great theater experience. We were talking earlier, I think maybe in our bonus, trying to remember, and then we talked in text about the last time we saw a movie together, and we're pretty sure the last time we all three were together at a movie was The Evil Dead with Bruce Campbell.
Yeah.
So kind of crazy that we were able to pull off. We think. That's our best guesstimate. We also just have all have
a year ago.
poo for brains when it comes to memory. So
I will say, just kind of piggyback that the 2013 one is very serious and pretty bleak.
Yeah,
and this one is although still pretty serious, has a lot more levity to it.
Yeah,
in a very Evil Dead way.
On the drive here, the word that popped into my head that I felt best explained the like main difference is that 2013 feels like a meaner film. Like it feels like it's angry at you. Like
that's what it sounded like the set was like too. From all understandings.
Yeah, it's a mean film, and this one doesn't seem like it's going as much out of its way to just make you hate yourself because everything is so dirty and bleak and horrible.
Yeah.
While still also obviously having the gore and the gags and all that stuff. But
so a little bit of background. This one is directed by Lee Cronin, who previously did The Hole in the Ground. And as far as the producers go, we got the original gang. We got Rob Tappert, we got Sam Raimi, and we got Bruce Campbell all supporting this film, which is fantastic. And I don't know how much they were involved, but I know that Campbell has been very vocal about this movie for a while.
From what I've heard, mostly through statements that they've made, but also through Fedes' commentary on 2013's Evil Dead, where Raimi was just a producer, not an executive producer like he is on this one. Mm-hmm. He was very involved to where Fedes showed him the movie after it was completed, and then Sam was the one who would go like, oh, okay, that arm chopping off scene, you need to push that even further, like make it even more fucked up. And he was in there like, oh, you can take this further and push that and make it crazier, and it'll still feel Evil Dead. He was like, it'll feel more Evil Dead. So it seems like their role is more like just making sure that you stay within whatever boundaries the Evil Dead should stay within, which seems to be no boundaries at all, but in the best possible way. Yeah. And that's also the thing that I said right after this, is that this movie does feel like more of the same, but not in a bad way if you're an Evil Dead fan. Like, to me, it's like, yeah, it's more of the same, but it's more Evil Dead. and it feels like Evil Dead. It doesn't go so far into weird territory where it's like, oh, like this just felt like a different script they slapped Evil Dead on.
I mean, the only big difference is the location.
Yeah.
I think the location adds enough of a difference to where you won't feel like this, like, oh, this is the same shit I've been watching.
Yeah.
But it also adds some like different challenges, which I think I think that are handled well, and I think that there's a lot of fun to be had if you're into this sort of movie.
Yeah, so the location is in a kind of condemned apartment building.
High rise.
in Los Angeles.
Ellie lives there, who's played by
Alyssa
Sutherland, and she has 3 kids. Morgan Davies plays Danny, Gabrielle Eccles plays Bridget, and Nell Fisher plays Cassie, and they are later joined by their aunt Beth, played by Lily Sullivan. And there's other kind of bit players, but those are the main core of who we're going to follow.
Yeah, much like the other Evil Dead films, this is a primarily one location, small cast of 5 or so people getting picked off. It pretty much just feels like, okay, let's take Evil Dead and just remix the elements slightly. But I think now would be a good time to say I recommend it. Go check it out. I had a great time. See it in theaters, specifically for the sound mixing and sound design. I thought it was fantastic.
There's some beautiful shots though that look like they belong on a big screen.
Yeah, and go see it for the title reveal. I mean, if you haven't seen it already, because for whatever reason now, to get social media clout, everybody takes their phone out and snaps pictures during movies. So the title reveal is just all over Twitter and everything, of people going, "Oh, they should win! If they should make an Oscar for title reveals and give the first one to." And I totally agree that it's a fucking badass reveal that really gets you like, okay, I'm on board.
It's like the Insidious.
Yeah.
Yes.
You know what I mean? Like, you still remember that shit.
Yeah, it's impactful. It's
I can hear the fucking the sting.
Yeah.
But and you guys recommend checking this out as well?
Yes.
100% in theaters.
Yes.
Yeah.
Couldn't agree
so
more.
getting into spoilers.
Bam.
Real quick, do we recommend it for people that aren't Evil Dead fans? Because we are obviously very big Evil Dead fans. Do you think that for a wide audience that it's accessible and enjoyable?
If you can handle gore, then absolutely yes.
Yeah. If you're not a fan of gore,
Verbinski.
yeah.
Ow.
Then don't check it out. But if you like that stuff, you don't need to have seen any of the other Evil Dead movies. It's fun if you have, because there's nice little references and connections, but it's not like this is something where you need to have seen all of the previous Evil Dead stuff. The cool thing about Evil Dead is that it's never been consistent. From literally Evil Dead to Evil Dead 2, they change up what the continuity is. Yeah. And then Army of Darkness, there's multiple endings for that movie, and then if you're going by the continuity of what happens in Ash versus Evil Dead, and then so it's kind of messy, but in a good way, to where it means you don't necessarily have to watch you can watch any of the individual Evil Dead things.
They all
I think
stand
besides
alone.
The show you should have at least seen
The
1 through 3, but with everything else, you can just hop in and you'll have a total blast and not be terribly confused.
Will you say that where you watch something like Saw, where it's gore just to be gore, do you think that this is gore in a different way? So if you're like someone who's not big and not sure what to watch, and if you're going to be able to stomach this, Saw is gross to be gross, and that's kind of the whole point of that movie. To me, this isn't the point of this movie. It works, and it's in abundance, but there's more to it than just gore for gore's sake.
Well, I think an interesting comparison. That's an interesting comparison, and then also this against something like we were talking about in our bonus, like Infinity Pool. Mm-hmm. The way the violence is handled there, I'd say this does a similar thing to Saw in that the gore to me feels very gag centric, where it's like, we're gonna make there's the cheese grater scene, there's the chewing on the wine glass, there's the tattoo needle. Okay. Like, people are going to refer to those as those things, and the cheese grater was hyped up for months before the movie came out, and so I was actually kind of disappointed by how tame that was.
I was like, let me see it just looked like a scratch.
But on the other hand,
a handful of scratches.
Until we get to the very end, when we get like a Lovecraftian, Cronenbergian, weird mutant monster, the gore feels very everyday things that could really happen to you. And to me, that's also very scary in its own way, similar to what we were talking about with Infinity Pool, where because the gore feels very visceral and realistic, it's almost more scary than having guts spilling out all over the floor. And I feel like where the 2013 Evil Dead maybe goes a little bit further in the direction of just like over the top, entire arms being chopped off, tongues being cut in half, this kind of plays it a little bit more realistic with the gore overall.
I think part of that is because I think if you're looking at 2013 as a whole, like it's a pretty consistent, like here's several fucked up gore scenes, and they're kind of played up in like this like more ridiculous fashion, where if you look at this one as a whole, it's because of where it ends that it keeps it more tame through the beginning parts of the film. I think that they could have made some of the stuff a lot crazier. Like they could have lopped some shit off with the drone scene in the cold open, or they could have done some crazier things in the apartment. But I think because the fact that it ends in this fucking disgusting monstrosity at the end of it, and you have to carry a lot of your weight there as far as like effects budget or the ability to convince like a ratings board to give you anything under an NC-17 or an X rating or whatever, you have to kind of toe the line. And I think that forced them to toe the line a lot earlier.
Well, there you go. So,
but I do think that some people are going to, and I've seen some, overall the reaction seems to have been very positive for this, especially from Evil Dead fans. But I do think that there are a lot of people who were hyped that this is going to be like even more fucked up. Like I said, because of what Emma from Spooky Astronaut said. She said that this was gorier than Terrifier 2, which I totally disagree with. But the gore in Terrifier 2 is to be over the top guts, right, and flesh being ripped off and stuff. And you mentioned Saw. In Saw, especially in the later ones, it feels like the gags are halting the plot completely so we can have 5 to 10 minutes of horrific stuff happening. That doesn't happen in this. Like all of the gore scenes are very quick and brutal, and they're part of the progressing plot.
They're there to service the film rather than to be the film.
Right. Yeah, okay, cool. Yeah, and that's what I thought too. So I don't know if that helps anybody out there. Like, is it just gross to be gross? To some degree, sure, but it also is there because it serves the story.
Well, so now let's talk a little bit about what the basic story of this is. So you had mentioned basically what the setup is with the family, but Beth, the aunt, she is a guitar technician. She's constantly being
referred to as a
groupie, and I'm not really sure why that bit was a recurring thing throughout the movie. I was trying to kind of figure out thematically what that meant, like if it was supposed to be like,
she's her sister like poking fun at you know what I mean? Like, yeah, you groupie.
Yeah, it just felt weird because then later she has like, I'm not a fucking groupie, and I was like, I don't care. like why am I supposed to care about that? I mean, it comes into play that like because she's a guitar technician, that's how she's able to like Ash style engineer some shit toward the end. So that comes into play, but Alyssa Sutherland's character is a tattoo artist, which also comes into play in a pretty dope scene. But they're all kind of alternative, like fringy people living in LA, and then the kids are all kind of their own different.
One of them is a DJ. One of them is like a rights activist who's like getting prepared to go to like a feminist rally.
Yeah, the little girl makes weird, creepy heads on
Staphne.
Staphne. Yeah.
I feel like they all, the kids and the parents, they all had like really like luscious lips.
Yeah.
I was like, what the hell is going on with all these lips?
All very gorgeous people.
Yeah, and I was like, what? I have little bird lips.
Even when the mom is the mother of all evil, Deadite level, I was like, I'd still hit it.
Yeah.
But how did you guys feel about the characters and the setup for the family? Like, did you care about these characters?
I thought they were all fun. Yeah, I thought that as the main Deadite, I think that the mother works fantastically well. She's a great believable character before the transition, and then after is just like so great. Like reminds me like of a lot of similarities to the original trilogy, and like how like fucked up and depraved their language can be, and just works really well in that space.
Yeah, she obviously to me got to do the actor's dream of getting to play like the more subdued normal person, motherly figure, and then getting to go completely feral and crazy and talk, say things like "Mommy's with the maggots now" and you titty sucking parasites. So that's all fun. Yeah, I liked all the characters. I knew I was completely on board when I think is it Danny, the one kid is DJing and they're playing LCD Sound System and remixing one of my favorite LCD Sound System songs, and I was like, fuck yeah, because LCD Sound System has also shown up a few times in succession recently, and I'm just like, yes, any more representation for, I mean, that's a extremely popular musical group, so I'm not the first person to say that, but
What did we think of this version of the Book of the Dead?
I was going to ask that next. I think my favorite is still 2013's with it all stitched together, and I love the way the illustrations in 2013's look. But I did think the like teeth on the side of this one was pretty cool. I do like that they try to do something
blood to open.
Yeah, that felt very newest Hellraiser, where it was just like, oh, the blood needs to touch the puzzle box and then it activates or whatever. I liked that they were like, okay, well, we can't have people be stupid enough to read the book like we have in every other one, so we'll just have like a dude on a vinyl record, and that was their nice, convenient way of it. None of us would have had any sort of suspension of disbelief because we all listen to vinyl records and have record players, but for a general audience,
I have winning it.
for a kernel audience, they would probably be like, what the fuck? But they obviously set up that the kid has a bunch of turntables and everything. So that's, cool. And then because they set up the tattoo artist thing and I noticed that, is it Ellie? The mom had tattoos like on her arms and legs when she's like doing the bath thing. And it hadn't even registered with me that she was a tattoo artist until she takes the tattoo gun and stabs her own head with it.
I caught it because she was building one. And that's very common. Aside, I mean, at least in prior decades even, that tattoo artists used to all build their own guns and their own equipment. And they would buy things like the motors for them, and then they would build them to kind of be how they wanted them to be. Now you see a lot more like, I think one of my more recent tattoos, it was all like a handheld system.
Yeah.
And like they click a couple of buttons and then dip, and it's good to go.
Weird.
But yeah, I liked that the book had its own style for this one. They referenced the fact that there were 3 books. In Army of Darkness, we see the 3 books that Ash sees in the medieval Dead times. In lore, the idea, I guess, for that was supposed to be that 2 of them are like copies of the original, but it seems in this that there's just multiple versions that do different things, and I kind of like that even the books in the first 3 movies, while supposed to be the same book, they don't really look anything the same, which is why I felt free to use, to make yours look however I wanted. Yeah. But I like that in the originals, you have that book that does its own, set of random, weird, crazy things. And then in 2013's, each of the different pages has like it's almost like a prophecy of what's going to happen to these different people. Like one's going to get burned, one's going to get, cut up or whatever. And then it eventually summons this abomination creature that attacks Mia in the end. And then in this one, you get a similar thing of like the pages flipping and showing like, okay, this horrible thing needs to happen. And then this horrible thing needs to happen to eventually summon this mother of evil, crazy thing. And I like that idea that like each of the books seems to have like a different set of rules and evil things that it does. And that could be because they've been copied by different people throughout history. And we get like that really creepy like religious convention where the priest is reading it, and you get to like the way they do the speakers, like boom, 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 like vibrating in the things when he's reading the words. And did you guys catch the Ash Williams cameo in this scene?
Is it the person who's walking in the alleyway?
Nope.
Is he on the record?
He's on the record.
Ash is, or Bruce Campbell is?
Both.
Okay.
So he is the person on the record who shouts. I didn't catch this. It was only after the fact that I learned about it. But he shouts, like, "Don't read from it. It's called the Book of the Dead for a reason."
Oh.
And it was people were like, "Oh, that was Bruce Campbell." Whoever, when they recognize his voice. Well, Lee Cronin said that it's Ash. But that record, I guess, is supposed to be in the 1920s. So people are wondering how Ash ends up in the 1920s. could be something like that's explored in the future. Could just be a little, cute little Easter egg. But I like the idea of Ash showing up in this one, even as just like the guy warning, like, don't read from you must not read from the book. He's the guy.
He said the thing.
But Cronin said that in this movie, they used 6,500 liters or 1,720 gallons, for you American idiots, of fake blood in the movie.
Don't want to be one of those.
And, I mean, yeah, there is a lot of blood. There's the very obvious Shining reference toward the end of the movie. As soon as there was an elevator, I was like, we're definitely getting a Shining reference. A little twist on it that the people were inside the elevator and get, like, spilled out with a big flood of blood. We get a remix of the, tree rape thing, but it doesn't go quite as far, and it's with elevator cables. How did you guys feel about that, like, remix of her being attacked in the elevator?
Well, so the movie starts off with a scene that is classic Evil Dead, where the camera is like flying around, and I was very disappointed by that because it looked very stiff, and I was like, this is not going to be a movie that I like just based off the shitty way that you're already attacking Evil Dead things.
Well, I also had the same thought, but it was because of the fact that it's revealed to be a drone.
Yeah.
I was like, oh god, we're doing that joke right off the bat.
So then when it was revealed to be that, I was like, okay, that makes sense why it was like that. And later on, it's a lot more of Raimi's signature style. So that was something that I liked. And so then going into this, which I didn't think we were going to get, I thought it was cool. It does something a little bit different. We get to see it cut into her in ways. But I mean, I hate to say that I was disappointed it didn't go further, but I feel like if you're an Evil Dead movie, you kind of gotta take that plunge.
That's part of what...
But it's like, I don't feel comfortable saying that at all.
Well, and it's not like they necessarily have to have a rape scene in every Evil Dead movie. Because, I mean, I don't think they do in Army of Darkness, but...
No. I don't even know if they have it in 2.
Yeah, but there is that element of, like, sexual perversion that goes into the Deadites that didn't feel like it came across quite as strong, but there is still a bit of it in the movie. It's just, I don't know if it's because they didn't want to insult, because people have obviously very different opinions 10 years from in 2023 than they did in 2013 about that kind of stuff.
Yeah, it's not bad that they don't do it because the scene is great all around.
I think there's also an additional layer that none of us are really attacking, and that's the fact that everybody in this circle of people, aside from the random bit characters, are blood relatives. So there is a good chance that taking it that route and crossing that barrier and making it more sexual in nature is a little dirtier and grimier than it is in any of the other efforts.
Yeah, that's true.
Which, again, could be an argument for why you should be.
It's
doing
pretty
that.
Evil Dead, but I think it's good they didn't.
And I do think that this movie wasn't trying to be a Terrifier 2 in terms of being like, we're going to be the most controversial, gory, fucked up thing to come into the theaters. I do think that it is still trying to appeal and make money with a modern audience, or with
doesn't
generic audience.
Mia say some fucked up shit to her brother and
yeah, I said the line earlier. She's like, "Why don't you come down here so I can suck your cock, pretty boy?"
Yeah. So I mean, they pushed it.
Yeah, but I think that it's further when it's your children.
Yeah.
She cuts her tongue in half at that one point, and she's like, "Kiss me, you cunt." We get a couple lines like that, but yeah, I do think that part of it is probably sensibility. It's just a different time now, and I'm okay with them not going quite as far. It's just that there were several scenes where I felt like I expected there to be a little bit further.
Yeah. Well, I thought the cheese grater was going to be deep
nasty,
and if they were giving out little graters for showings, I was expecting it to be a kind of heavy-hitting scene, and it wasn't bad. It just wasn't what I was led to believe, I would say, I guess. Some Evil Dead stuff that they do. We get a twist on the floating eyeball. Mm-hmm. So I won't say how it happens, but there is an eye shot through the room, and it's very campy.
Yeah.
And so it works for us as Evil Dead fans. We are here for that to some degree, right? But it does feel a little out of place with the tone of the movie.
I think some people are going to be put off by that scene specifically.
And it's fan service.
It's the most Sam Raimi shit I've ever seen in my entire life, aside from like vomiting into somebody's mouth or
what should we get?
Well, so there was that scene,
and then the get some, or come get some, or whatever. But I was like, yes, as an Evil Dead fan, love it. As an homage to Ash, great. As a part of this movie,
I listened to a review on the way here from a couple guys who had not seen any of the previous Evil Deads, and they
how weird.
And they said they were actually, and they still really enjoyed the movie, but they were saying that they were able to pick out the reference parts because they stood out to them. They said the eyeball stood out as like that's got to be a reference to one of the other movies. They said the "Come Get Some" definitely didn't feel in character for her, and felt like a reference. So they said like they could tell when it was trying to be a little bit fan servicey, which again, I mean, I wasn't complaining because I was like, cool, make it feel more uniquely Evil Dead than the 2013 did, and because that one I felt like, you're playing different tightrope walks with these movies, because in 2013 I think they were thinking, okay, we need to just make a really straightforward, brutal horror movie to kind of try to reinvent this franchise.
We've also watched Platinum Dunes like come up to bat and fail over and over and over again with different attempts at remakes of other shit. Nightmare on Elm Street got critically panned. I mean,
yeah. So on this one, I think it was, they took the risk of changing the location. Mm-hmm. So then they had to, to me, it felt like they had to make sure to put in extra references to other Evil Dead stuff to make it feel like there was less disconnect, because it wasn't taking place in a cabin in the woods, which I'm totally fine with. Change up the setting, do crazier, different stuff. I want to see them go even further with this idea of taking it to different places.
Go to the Insidious franchise. Take them to the further.
Hell, do it.
Sleep.
But like I said, it didn't bother me, but I think it will put some people off if they don't get the references. But again, I mean, I think it's totally fine. I think overall it still works really well.
It does some pretty cool stuff on it of its own that you don't see in the other parts of the franchise, like the Cronenberg-esque The Thing type monster, which was new. And it's pretty good. I was interested in that, and I would have liked to see more of it, to be honest. And I would have really liked to see it go into that fucking grinder.
Yeah.
Yeah. As soon as that they showed that grinder in the garage right before they find the book, I was like, well, we obviously know how the movie's going to end right there.
And when we found out that dude had like a lawn service, I was like, well, we're definitely getting a chainsaw, baby.
Well, he mentions like, oh, I got my tools in my truck or whatever.
Yeah.
And he mentions like, I got a hammer and I got a chainsaw and all that.
Like, yes.
Might be an unpopular opinion, but I'm sick of the chainsaws in Evil Dead. It was Ash's thing, and that was cool. Then obviously in 2013, I feel like they were like, okay, well, we need to make sure that we nail home that this is an Evil Dead movie. I don't think at this point you have to keep having the characters randomly end up with chainsaws at the end. Have them have their own unique, different weapon. Like, I get that it's a staple of the franchise, but you're not going to do a better chainsaw ending than 2013 did. That's the gif that's going around everywhere on Twitter as like... Yeah, and just the raining blood. Like, you're just not going to be able to really top that, so do something different.
I had to cut it up with my chainsaw arm.
Yeah. I mentioned this to you guys, and it kind of blew my mind. The same cinematographer who did this film is the cinematographer from Ash vs. Evil Dead, which actually got me to go start watching that, and it is fucking hilarious, and at times gorier than this movie was. Yeah. I'm actually like pretty shocked watching it. I just finished the first season. Because I wanted to get more into the lore, especially if, we can get into this now, Campbell said recently in an interview that the plan now is for Sam and his brother Ivan to create an Evil Dead Bible that is basically a way that they can hand this franchise off to different creators and say, as long as you keep it in line with this creative Bible, go crazy. And Campbell was saying that's their way of like, they want to start getting these out every 2 to 3 years as opposed to every 10 years. And he was saying like, we can literally go anywhere with it because the books are ancient. We can go way into the past. We can go into the future. We can go to different locations around the world. We can pretty much do whatever we want as long as it centers around the evil book. And he was saying that they're going to try to bring all of this franchise like somehow in line. Which, I mean, there's always going to be things that don't make sense between these movies and how they connect, but I would be interested to see how that happens. There have been pictures floating around that Jane Levy, who played Mia in 2013, together with all the women from this one, like the women of Evil Dead, and they like shot some pictures together, and they've all been very supportive of like Levy like tweeting about like, yeah, congratulations, like welcome to the family, and it's been really cool to see Alyssa Sutherland. Like, people are saying she is going to be a new like horror icon, her Deadite and everything, and
I thought Beth did a great job too.
Yeah,
Yeah, no, I thought everybody was great. I thought the little girl, especially for it being her first film, because at the end, it's like Annie
She's
introducing.
adorable.
She's adorable, and also just, I mean, she's really good. And that must be so weird. And like, I know that those sets must be really fun to work on, and I'm sure they do a great job of making the kids not scared when they're not supposed to be scared. But because of how horrific the imagery and stuff in this is, it just seems like such a weird environment for a little kid to be working in, which makes me think that she must be obviously very professional for her age.
Yeah. One of the things I wanted to see that this movie didn't do, and maybe this would have been too much fan service, but and I don't remember if they do it in 2013, but in the other ones, we typically get that scene where the main Deadite then transforms back for like a scene and like tricks them. And I think this would have been really impactful with the daughter when she's in the peephole, to have the mom turn around and be like normal for a while. And I know they did it like vocally, but I was like that, and because she has her back facing her, and like, this is the perfect time for you to do a very Evil Dead move.
That's where, and I don't know if this is what you were about to say, but that's where I feel like this movie does kind of stumble a little bit in terms of doing Evil Dead right, because it does change up a little bit of like the logic of how the Deadites work. In this, it seems a lot more like a gradual, almost like zombie infection type of, like, they gradually become sicker and grosser.
And depending on who is becoming a Deadite, because the kids come almost immediately. People in the hallway take half an hour to an hour.
Yeah, and they don't do near as much of the like switching and back and forth between looking normal and looking evil. A couple times she like switches her voice, like you said, and starts talking like the regular mom, but still looks all fucked up and stuff. And I was like, yeah, but in Evil Dead, like, part of the fun is that they can like
fuck with you.
It instantly switch back to looking like normal and fuck with you, and that's part of like their psychological mind game. And so and then also like the way the Deadite possession is transferred felt kind of inconsistent and weird in this. Like, it felt to me like there were a lot.
I think it's always been kind of that way though too.
Yeah, it just feels to me like in the old ones it was a lot more consistent of just like, if you are attacked and injured in some way by the Deadite, you are going to become a Deadite. In this, like, a lot of the times the character would get attacked and they'd survive just fine for a little while, and something else would happen to them, and then they would turn into a Deadite. And like, I was confused about the tattoo gun thing. You guys explained that like it was because she stuck it into her head to get her like blood on it.
You gotta get the blood, I think. Yeah, or the vomit.
Like, scratched her face with it and then like licked it or whatever. And like, you know, that obviously makes sense why that happened. But it just felt a little bit like they didn't have quite as strong a grasp on how the logic of the Deadites was supposed to work in this one.
What did you want to say?
I mean, I felt like I wasn't as disappointed in that specific scene that she didn't like have like a physical transformation. I think that part of that is knowing your audience. Maybe that takes a lot of effort, and for her, she knew that she could get what she wanted by just changing the voice, because in the end she still tricks her.
And I think another thing I wanted a little bit more of is exploring this like motherhood, pregnancy, like through line. It
doesn't really go anywhere.
So like with Mia, the drug stuff is, and the recovery is exactly. And so they add this, and it just kind of feels tacked on. Like, we don't need it to push the story forward.
To me, it's just supposed to reinforce the whole motherhood theme that's going throughout the entire movie, and like maybe it's symbolic at the end that Beth overcoming the Deadites is showing that she's finally become responsible enough to be a mother.
Well, now she's gonna be a mother too.
Well, yeah, and because she protected the daughter.
But I think we either needed more of it or none of it, because I don't feel like they did a service to that idea.
Well, and it's also actually, I think, doing a little bit of a disservice in some circles, because there's specifically that line where Deadite Ellie is attacking Beth, and she like, you know, she says like, "Oh, two souls," and mentions that she knows there's a baby inside of her, and a lot of people are taking that as a pro-life message. Of like, oh, the director wouldn't have mentioned that the baby had a soul unless he agrees with the idea that, you know, unborn babies have souls.
Maybe it's just a cool line, dude.
To me, it was like, that's just the line that I would have instantly thought of when I thought, oh, well, she has a baby inside her, so the Deadite would mention, like, I'm going to feast on both of you. But a lot of people are taking it as, like, it's a pro-life versus pro-choice message. And I'm like, I don't think there was that much thought put into it. My thought was, ooh, maybe they're setting up the idea that the baby is going to, like, still be possessed, post the movie, and that she's going to have like some sort of freaky deadite baby. That would be very fucked up and interesting.
Very Dawn of the Dead.
Just totally. Fucking chainsaw out of her cooter. Yeah, so there were some things where I didn't feel like they fully came together, but nothing that really like tore me out of the movie or made me think like, oh, this sucks. I still had a really good time with it. I think overall 2013 is a bit more effective in my opinion, and does go a bit crazier in a way where I feel like it's more effective. But I also have that entire movie memorized front to back because I've seen the 2013 version 10 million times. It's like my favorite when I want to show a new person I'm dating or a new person I've met who's over, like, hey, you want to see a fucked up horror movie? Put on Evil Dead 2013. Or it's like, if I just feel like watching just a fucked up fun horror movie, put on 2013. I think so. I just would need to rewatch this one to really get like my opinion solid on it.
I think the 2013 one is probably a better movie, but I think this one is probably a more in line with Evil Dead.
Yeah,
if that makes sense. Like definitely the 2013 one is great for what it is, and it does have Evil Dead elements in a lot of ways. But this one feels like it could have been part of the progression of that franchise.
Yeah.
What do you think?
I mean, I like them both quite a bit. I think that I like that this isn't afraid to kind of break out some of those campier elements, just to kind of tie itself in.
Totally.
But I could see this being that bridge that gets you to combining everything, so that way it all gets under the same umbrella. We're not looking at an Evil Dead remake anymore. We're looking at this Evil Dead being part of the franchise.
And I will say that I think the characters are handled better in this movie than they are in 2013. There's pretty
better in this.
Yeah, and in 2013, really the only, I mean, I like the characters in that, but Mia obviously gets the majority of her characterization is in the beginning and at the very end, because most of the time she's possessed, and then her brother is kind of a brick wall, and then the friend who reads the book is, to me, my favorite and the most interesting character. But a lot of parallels between the movies. Like, this does feel like it's kind of trying to hit a lot of the same beats because you have the familial connection. It's brother sister in 2013, and obviously mother and sisters in this, and
that goes back to the original too.
Yeah, and
I guess the original.
Then also you have like the brother in 2013. His whole bit is that he like abandoned Mia with their abusive mother. So there's that whole like, oh, you left and haven't really been around while I've been doing my thing, and then it's about that character coming back and having to face this evil in order to like gain a level of responsibility and adulthood. So there's obviously like parallels, but I think that you're right that does all kind of go back to the original Evil Dead. Some little bits of trivia before we wrap up our discussion here. Most of the names of characters in this movie are references to actors from previous Evil Dead movies. The pizza place in the movie is called Henrietta's, which is the name of the bloated it's the wife of the guy who reads the book in the first one on the tape and is like the demon. And Cronin did point out that there is no Oldsmobile Delta in the movie. It's the first Evil Dead that doesn't have Sam Raimi's car that he lost his virginity in.
It does have a Buick, though.
So it has a Buick, and also apparently the chainsaw, it's the first time the chainsaw is not red. It's yellow. It's the exact same paint color as the Oldsmobile. So that was his way of like combining the references and sneaking them in. And he was like, yeah, the chainsaw is the color of the car.
What's the name of the car? What do they call it?
The Shaggin' Wagon.
No, I don't think that.
They call it, is it the Beast? I don't know. They have like a name for it.
The old rust bucket. Lee Cronin also confirmed online that the cat that is seen and heard in the vents of the apartment complex does in fact survive the events of the film.
Yeah.
So I breathed a huge sigh of relief.
Speaking of animals in movies, have you seen that like new trailer for Sisu? Where it's like the cutest dog ever, and then it's a bunch of people tweeting like the dog better not die, the dog better not die, and then the filmmakers just put on the screen, don't worry, the dog doesn't die.
I mean,
and I was like, yeah, good call.
That's why that website Does the Dog Die exists.
Yeah.
Oh, and also I wanted to point out I love that in both somebody posted about this, and I was like, oh shit, yeah, totally. In this and in Yellow Jackets, the newest season, very good trans representation. The actor who plays Danny is trans, but that is never brought attention to in the movie and isn't part of that character's identity or like a big deal about them. But they are just a trans actor playing a role, and that's awesome. And in Yellow Jackets, similarly, I don't know if you've gotten to this point yet, but the Purple Cult, the Purple group, the woman that like helps kidnap and beat up what's her face?
The one she stabs?
Yeah, the one that's all pissed off at her now because they
Yeah.
like had their also
With the
trans.
fish?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah, with the fish. Anyway, so I just think the representation makes me happy, and also that in both cases it's not like the defining trait of that character and isn't really brought attention to because
Also, for having that kind of representation, then I think that the point about the prior thing about being pro-life is probably moot.
yeah, but who knows? People, they can take whatever they want from a movie, and that's the beauty of cinema, right? Cronin did say in a recent interview that he has several ideas for possible sequels to this. He doesn't know if he's going to be involved, but he said if
They did
he
set it up for a
is-
sequel.
Yeah, and he said that was obviously done intentionally. I like the way that this wraps around because it does a similar thing to 2013 where you have the kind of the cold open of just an unrelated in that until you find out that it is related, but just like of a different set of people being tormented by the book and the Deadites. In the first one, you have the daughter who's like tied to the post and she gets set on fire. Yeah, which is brutal. In this one, you have the people at the lake with the drone and the fucking scout being ripped off, and
So good.
very hardcore, and the gorgeous title reveal. That,
Yes.
Um,
That is actually the end of the movie.
yeah, you get a little card that pops up that says the previous day or one day before or something like that.
Yeah.
And so then the whole events of the movie take place the day before this happens. We find out that apparently this woman has just like she must have had a rough night of drinking or something because she's apparently just been passed out
In
the
the
entire
hotel,
time. An
Or
earthquake, a deadite attack has
movie.
happened, and she just gets up and is like, "Okay, I'm going on my vacation." But now the book is traveling. The Deadites traveling. The virus is spreading. Seems like leaving the door open for the Deadites to spread all around the world.
Expansion.
So some of the different ideas that Cronin said. He said, I didn't want to bait it for sequels necessarily, even though the ending could be interpreted that way, but the ending for me was closing the loop back to the beginning of the movie, the way the story is told. I've got 4 places I'd like to look in terms of where to go. He said one of his ideas is the story behind the Book of the Dead, where that comes from. He said we have a history in this film that's presented through the vinyl records, so there's a story that needs to be told there.
Oh, we talked about that as soon as we
Yeah.
got out. Where I was like, that would be an easy place to go. You've already referenced it, and it would be cool to go to a different time period.
Yeah, so he was saying like that's in the 20s. We could
Nice.
explore that. He also said continuing with surviving characters from this movie, we could just see where their characters go and if they fight more evil Ash style after this.
Yeah.
He said a third idea would focus on what happens to this building that has had Deadites in it. Like maybe what if it spreads to all these people and they go off to different places. So
They turn it into a Netflix mall, and then we get that movie.
well, it was supposed to get demolished, they said, like in a week after the movie.
Yeah.
And so it'd be, maybe they would explore like the crew coming to demolish it and running into all the carnage and Deadites.
Yeah, I want to see people get hit by wrecking balls.
And then he said the last idea for a sequel would be to take things back into the woods, where Evil Dead films traditionally happen. He said because of the opening and the closing, there's that continuation of how this evil has a gate. So like that's why he put that woods thing in, is to show like there's always this connection to the woods. He said that brings us back into a forest context, which excites me because I love that I broke the mold, but wouldn't it be fun now if I went back to a cabin in the woods? It could be a cool journey. So yeah, I mean, he has some ideas. We'll see if he does another Evil Dead. I was talking to I clapped really loud, I'm sorry. I was talking to Steven recently because he had just seen it and he wanted to talk about his thoughts. And
How was he on it?
he had a blast with it. He had very similar thoughts to pretty much everything that we've said here, which doesn't surprise me. But we were trying to think like who would be a good director who could really get a good handle on the Evil Dead 2 style of like horror comedy if they decided to go back in that route. And I said the team that did Psycho Gorman and The Void. Steve Kostansky, I think, because they know how to do the really awesome practical gore and effects, and they also know how to do the comedy. And to me, Psycho Goreman kind of feels like it's in a similar vein to your Evil Dead styles of horror comedy, and then The Void is just really fucked up, like other dimension demon stuff. So I was like, I would be interested to see them do it if they were given the right budget for it, because everything they've done so far has been pretty small budget.
Yeah, in-house
I wouldn't
stuff
want
type shit.
to go that route. Not that those guys couldn't do it, but I don't want to go the comedy route.
Well, also,
I
if
like
you want
the,
that,
like-
there's 3 seasons of Ash vs. Evil
Yeah.
Dead that everybody sleeps on, and I posted on Instagram about it recently. Like, if you want that, those 3 seasons are pretty much Evil Dead 2 done for 3 seasons. Like, if you love Evil Dead 2 like I do,
There's only 3 seasons.
yeah, and they're short too. They're 10 half-hour episodes per season. You could get through it in a weekend if you really tried, but I'm trying to pace it out a little bit.
Yeah, and savor it.
But the
One a week, bud.
The comedy is fucking hilarious. Raimi comes in and directs a bunch of episodes.
I mean, doesn't it start off with him with a wooden hand, like taking a girl from behind?
Yeah, he's just some of his. I mean, the one I sent you about this, like, yeah, we hit a deer and then the sucker just exploded, and then I had to chop him up with my chainsaw arm. At one point, they're like trying to figure out between. So Ash's severed hand comes back
Oh,
and grows a whole evil, replica Ash, and then his like compadres have to figure out which one is which. And basically, it ends up coming down to one of them makes a racist comment about Asians,
So they knew it
and
was
they
the
blow
real
him
Ash?
away. They blow him away, and they go, "No, it's because we know Ash, you are racist against Mexicans, not Asians." So it's like the specific brand of racist that Ash was that got them. But anyway, I feel like we've gone on long
have.
enough about the Evil Dead, but yeah, we had a blast. Great experience. Go see it in theaters. It's going to be on streaming in, I think they just announced, like 2 weeks. So
Oh my god, really?
that seems
Yep.
like so short.
I mean, that's all these movies, unless they're like a
But
Top
it's doing
Gun
well,
or-
right?
Yeah, it's making a really good amount of money for this budget of movie. I think it's already made its budget back, and will continue to make a bunch of money. And yeah, I'll be very interested to see if we're talking about another Evil Dead movie in a couple years, or if we
Hopefully.
have to wait a whole nother decade. But I'm also just really pumped to go rewatch this one. And
Yeah, I'm. It's not a bad entry into the franchise by any means. I'm glad it's a part of it, and I think that it fits right in with everything else.
we talk a lot about Scream being like the most consistent horror franchise. A lot of people are coming out now saying that like Evil Dead actually, in terms of quality, has overall not had a single dud, which I don't think you can say about Scream. Like, I enjoy all the Scream movies, but I would say like 3's a dud in the overall.
Depends on what you're going in for.
I'm not saying it's a terrible movie. I'm just
Yeah.
saying that like I don't think a single entry in Evil Dead, including Ash vs. Evil Dead, is anything less than really good to great.
I mean, 3. I think both 3s are weird.
Yeah, but Army of Darkness is
Yeah.
really fucking fun, and it's funny, and it's just a different thing. But anyway,
I mean, you could have not said Army of Darkness, and you would have been correct either way. I think the same thing for Scream 3. I think it's funny and really fun if you
Yeah.
allow it to be.
well, you want to fight about it?
So what do you want to fight about? Hey, next week we are going to continue anime, and we're talking about Ghost in the Shell, the animated movie, not the Scarlett Johansson.
I mean,
live
I
action.
would say both of them are animated in one way or another, but the one that is actual good animation.
Cell animation.
And this
I
is
guess?
so we're watching Ghost in the Shell with shoes on, right?
Yes.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure I was watching the
The
right
A24
film.
movie.
Yeah, the A24 Ghost in the Shell with shoes on.
All right, on. So we hope that you check that out, and if you haven't, check out our bonus stuff where we just talked about Infinity Pool, and next week we are talking about Jennifer's Body. So that's on Patreon for only $5 a month, and it could be all yours and so much more.
Yeah.
Anyway, thanks for checking out this episode. I've been Tone.
I've been John.
The internet darlings with the maggots now. Anthony.
See you next time.
Keep it creepy.
Join the Creep Cult. $5 a month at patreon.com/Porcelain Peak for exclusive content, merch discounts, and more. Join the Creep Cult. $5 a month at patreon.com/porcelainpeak for exclusive content, merch discounts, and more.